Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shelly, and today I'm going to be talking through books I love this year, and I'm so excited to go on this journey with you because this is not a very well planned out video. So we're just going with it, alright? So if you are new to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I sometimes do a little bit of an off-the-cuff video, and instead of having a belabored list of my favorites, I decided that I wanted it to be more about my feelings. Like, does it feel like a favorite? and to do it in that way. And anyway, so yeah, like as I said, if you're new, I really love books and reading. I sometimes do quite planned out, sort of structured videos. And then sometimes I do stuff like this, like off the cuff, just spur of the moment, what I'm loving right now, or based on my mood. That sometimes dictates some of my content. But all of it is surrounded around the love of reading, the passion for reading, the passion for books, book collecting, all of that. And if you like the vibe, then I would encourage you to subscribe, stick around. Without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. In spite of my own self, I still want some structure to this video. So I'm going to start with the books I read furthest back. We're just talking about 2023 favorites. So that's like, I guess that's rule number one. I'm gonna start with the books that I finish in January and move forward chronologically. And I think that will help with whittling this list down, because there are books that I know that I've already forgotten about. So we're starting back in January and we're going to just move through the year. And the third thing is that I'm just going to base it off of my feelings, honestly. Like the books that I just loved, that I loved. And so it's like the books that get my heart fluttering, the books that make me just like so excited, almost like seeing my lover from across the room, and it's been a little while since I've seen them, and you get that flutter in your stomach and you're like, oh, there you are. I love you. That's the feeling that I'm basing it off of, okay? Since this is not pre-planned, I'm gonna have to get up and down quite a bit. Though for you it will just be seconds, but know that I'm gonna be having to move around to find these favorites, so I'll be right back with the book, my favorite, ooey gooey, wonderful favorite from back in January. I also decided to do it this way so I could get this favorite. If you are a long-standing viewer of the channel, you're probably like screaming at the camera and screaming at your screen rather, and you're like, Shelly, please stop talking about this book, because I feel like I've praised it all year long. I love it so much, and it is Middlemarch by George Eliot. This is her sprawling, epic, wonderful, amazing novel about a gossipy small town. And one of my, two of my favorite things about this book, are the incredible narrator who has her own, she's got her own voice, she's got her own opinion, and I love that. And it really worked for me from like the first sentence. From the first part of the book, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be a good novel. And then, but it did take me about 150 pages to like truly feel invested in the work. And then the second thing I loved about it were her depth of characters and her understanding of nuance in terms of the human condition and the way we live our lives. And oh man, I read this back in January and I still feel my heart double beat when I think about this novel, and when as I'm holding it up to you, I'm like, oh, it's so good. It's so good. The next book makes my heart double beat but for different reasons. It is like the beating heart of panic in my life. And it is the January 6th report. It is a nonfiction report available to all U.S. citizens. It's a public document, and it is an accounting of what happened on January 6th with the insurrection here in the U.S. a few years back. And it was just a really important read for me to understand the events and what led to the events, and it was really pivotal. But it doesn't give me that ooey gooey I love you favorite. It's like, I'm so glad I read you because you help fill in some context that I need as a citizen of the US and like as a person living on this planet, and to just better understand like our political landscape even now. So that was a really important read, but it's hard to be like it's my favorite, but my heart does double beat, but it's more the double beat of panic, you know? Like, truly. Okay, we're moving on. The next book I cannot find, and I'm not going to spend a long time looking for it, so I've already spent a little bit looking for it. And it is Antony by Sophocles and Oedipus the King. I read all three of the Theban cycle, so Oedipus the King, Antigone, and Oedipus at Colonus. Oedipus at Colonus has one of the most memorable lines, which is "time obliterates," and I think about that very often. However, the overall story didn't stick nearly as much as Antigone and Oedipus the King. These are ancient Greek plays that I had been meaning to read for a long time, and I finally read them, and they were so good. I really love Antigone's strength of character, and I really, really, really love the revealing way the ancients were thinking about fate and good and evil and why things come into our lives and why things play out the way that they do. Even if we are a good person, you know, why do bad things happen to good people? And the way that it was written and its thoughtfulness and insight of the human condition. Oh, there's a theme. Then, it was just something I really loved, but I cannot find my copy right now. I'm sure it's like under a stack of books somewhere or just tucked somewhere. I cannot remember. Ooh, there's like books that come really close to ones that I love, and I'm like, do I include those? I think I am going to stick with like the best of the best. So I had a really good, I think we're starting to encroach upon maybe summer. I don't know when I finished. Okay, so April. So it seems like I had an okay like February, March. But then April, at the end of April, I had some really good reads. Like above all, one stands out, and that is Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. And it is the true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland. And it talks about the political situation. Wow, so in my nonfiction, I love politics. And in my fiction reading, I like things that are nuanced about humanity, or nuanced about the human condition, the innards of our lives. Say Nothing is about the IRA and about the upheaval in radicalism that was going on in Northern Ireland, a handful of decades ago. And it follows some key figures that were extremists in the IRA, and it follows some of their stories extremely closely. Patrick Radden Keefe does some reporting that's really closely honed in on a few key people, and he sees it through to some of them to the end of their lives, some of it till the present day of when he's writing. And it was really interesting and it was really powerful. And for me, I didn't know much about the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and I learned all about it. And Patrick Radden Keefe is a really mesmerizing author. He has a way of gripping his audience and keeping you like totally fixated and engaged. It was so good. It was such a good read, and I'm so glad I read it. I must have hit some kind of stride that was going on, because shortly after that I read Bunny by Mona Awad, and oh, this was great. This is dark academia, unhinged woman, cuckoo's bananas crazy, wild, weird, odd book. Like, I would not recommend this to everyone, but it seems like if you like just off, like quite literally off the rails kind of writing, that is amazing. I'm like, I'm not selling this well. This is the story of a woman who wants to get in the in group, at a school, at a college, like the elite of the elite in a school. And they are artists, I think, or writers. And as she makes her way into this group, things just get stranger and stranger and start to utterly unravel in the weirdest way. It is surrealist, it's odd, and I loved every single page of it. It was so cuckoo's weird, bananas crazy, odd, weird book. Shortly after that, I read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver, which ended up winning the BookTube Prize, the Pulitzer Prize, the Women's Prize for Fiction here in 2023, and it totally deserves all those accolades because it was phenomenal. It is closely tied to David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, which I have not read, and it is set in like the 90s in the South, in a small Appalachian town. And it follows a young man who is lovingly called Demon. And Demon has the most difficult, hardest of the hard, tragic circumstances, like coming close to A Little Life by Yanagihara, but not quite to that level, but we're getting there. He's got just a really rough upbringing, and it is like that. He is up against the odds, and it talks very heavily about, or the themes definitely touch on drug use, drug addiction, the effects of drugs to families and communities. It has a heavy a theme of the foster care system and being critical of the foster care system and what it's doing to young children. But it talks about bonds, the bonds that we make with each other and with others, both in and outside of our family, and the way that we stay connected and the importance of being connected. And it's all told through the personality of Demon Copperhead, who is quite the character with a capital C, just has a unique and sometimes crass way of looking at the world, but to me, it worked and I loved it. Now, it really hinges on, like, if you go into Demon Copperhead and you start to feel like this isn't working and you're like 30 pages in and the voice is not working for you, the voice is not going to change. It's not going to work for you. But for me, it worked. And I think that there are some people who truly, like, they DNF it immediately. I've two reasons why. I don't know why I'm like all on this book. Two reasons why, and it's probably because it's such a big book. And so if you're like, I want to know if it'll work for me, one of which is that some readers feel like it's quite predictable because it does follow David Copperfield very closely. And so if you're very familiar with David Copperfield, you may not be surprised by the plotting of Demon Copperhead. But also, it's just that the voice of Demon, if that isn't working for you, it never will. It never will. Like, it's just, Demon is Demon through and through. And that's what I loved about it. I felt like there was a strength of character, but some people are just like, not believable, and they go on and on and on about it, and then they DNF it. And it's like, if that's how you felt, then absolutely, that is your prerogative. And I'm glad that you're not spending your time with someone that you don't like, but I loved him. Like, I wanted to wrap him in my arms and give him the biggest hug that I can muster because I felt like he deserves it. He deserves that big, huge hug from me and saying, like, everything's going to be okay and let me cook you a good meal. Like, this is how I felt. Wow, I'm going to stop, but clearly that was like a home run read for me because I'm still yammering on about it right now. The good reads continue, though this is more of like, it made my heart beat in a tragic way. It was, wow, it was bleak. It was so bleak, and it's, again, hard to recommend. I guess I like books that are like a little off center. Some people, like Hannah from Hannah's Books, does not like this book based on her teenage self that read it in one day. But it is Ethan Frome by Edith Wharton. I love this story. I mean, I love it in the way where it's like, whoa, girl, I did not know you could get that dark. It is dark. It is bleak. It's like, whew, well, okay. We went there. It is about the story of Ethan Frome, and he is in a marriage that is not great. And I'm just going to leave it at that. You should really just go in Just go in. Ooh, it's dark though. I must have been on a pretty good kick because I went from Ethan Frome pretty shortly after I read Josephine T's Daughter of Time, which I thought was amazing. It was so good. This is about the Plantagenets and Richard III and the princes who were killed in the tower. And our inspector is investigating this. And it is very different than I thought it was going to be. It's very modern for its time, the structure and the way she figured out how to write the story. Very different though, and you kind of have to be okay with some historical stuff. And for somebody who doesn't know much about the Plantagenets, I wasn't lost in the least, but I am interested in the Plantagenets and in the Tudors and in historical things and the way we think about history. And it is just as much about the way that we think about history as it is about the mystery itself. And it is fantastic. So good. I did forget a book. We were all the way up to May, like mid-May, and or even June. And I was like, oh no. I forgot a book and I had to go back and look and I glossed over it. But I want to make sure that back in March, I did read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, and this was great. This is fantastic. It is about Theo. He has a tragedy that happens early on in his life, and it is really about the choices he makes as a young man and building his character. And there was this beautiful conversation about art and the way we think about art and the possession of art and what that means in our lives. But the bigger question was like our conscious, like our own morality. And I just loved Theo. I thought he was a fantastic character. There are some really great characters in here, but Theo was my absolute favorite. This was my first foray into Donna Tartt, and actually I am going to speak about a book that I didn't love so much, but I loved it, but it just can't, okay, so I also read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and I love this. This was really good. It was a whodunit mystery. You find out in the first page who got killed and who did the killing. So it's more like what happened, what was the motive behind it. And it's good. It's dark. It is like all about the vibes. There's a lot of like dark gothic vibes in this book. And it's dark academia, and this is like what launched the last 2 decades of dark academia literature is like with this book. And this is about friendships that really aren't friendships. They're like unhealthy friendships. Like, could you really call these people friends? And it's just very different. And I do really love this book, but knowing that she wrote The Goldfinch as well, I cannot help but compare the two. And The Goldfinch is just a better book. She definitely honed in on a cinematic writing style, and it unfolds so beautifully. Is this a perfect book? No, but it is a beautiful read, and you really see her craft sharpened and developed, and it's so good. It's so good. All right, so I wonder, I think people would have maybe asked, if you're a regular viewer, you might have been like, what happened to The Secret History? And it's like, guys, I loved it. But I really, like, I can appreciate and I can love on The Goldfinch, like, far more than The Secret History. Is it because The Secret History's cover, like the cover of this book, is absolutely atrocious? Possibly, because this is a terrible cover. It's so ugly. It is so ugly. But anyways, but truly, The Goldfinch, one of my favorite reads this year. I loved it. Loved it so much. All right, let's get back to where we were. Oh, the next book. Okay, I think that something must have happened. I got really sick in April. And then after that, I was like, I'm going to read by my mood. Like, I'm going to read based on how I'm feeling. If things are not working for me, I'm going to set them aside. And I think it starts to really show as the year progresses. And so I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, which is just a wild romp of a novel. It is just fast-paced, horror-esque, but it's not very scary, at least in my opinion. I'm a scaredy cat and I could read it. And it is about two best friends. It's about two women who are best friends, or they're girls. They're like, you meet them when they become friends, and then you see them in high school, and in high school one of them is possessed by the devil, and of course the only person who knows and is convinced of it is her best friend, because you know it is her best friend. And I am going to say what everyone says. Not only is it just a wildly entertaining book, the fact that he is able to just write female friendships with such nuance, and with the setting of the South with just such an understanding and avoiding all the cliches in terms of like Southern, like what is Southern, was just so good. It was so good, y'all. I loved it. I love that book so much. Sometime during midsummer, I think, something like that, I read my first Muriel Spark book, Aiding and Abetting. Oh my goodness, this was amazing. I know I keep saying that, but I am talking about my favorites and like the ones that I feel super passionate about. And this was great. This is like a book in which I want to read everything that Muriel Spark ever wrote, because she is amazing. She has razor sharp wit, and she knows how to write a slim work. And this, I mean, it's intricately plotted, it's funny, it's witty. It is witty. And I love this, and I'm so glad I read it. It was so good. It was so good, y'all. And it's also a weird, let me go get that. I dropped it on the ground, and then I was like, wait a second, I have one more thing to say about it. It's also a very strange, it's a weird book. It's convoluted and odd, but it worked out so well. And I just was like, I was here for the weirdness. But definitely another one that was just like, if you weren't here for the weirdness, you would probably be like, oh no, it was just hard to follow, or it just went off the rails and I did not like that. No, for me, I'm like, I loved it that it went off the rails, and I thought it was done so well. And I like think back on this with just pure joy and pure adornment. Judge me if you want, but I love this book so much. And it is The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. Oh my goodness, this is a chunkster of a book. Look at this right here. And I had not really been back in our Tudor world since Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. Like, I loved Wolf Hall so much that I was like, I don't know if I want to be back, y'all. And so I kind of stayed away a little bit. And then I finally dove back in with The Other Boleyn Girl. And this is very different. It is far more of like romance. This is not of the Hilary Mantel literary, amazing, impeccable writing. It is not that, but it is like the Tudors meet a romance novel that is also got some grit to it. And so it was great. It was so great. It was so interesting. Here we really follow the Boleyns. And there's Mary and Anne and their brother, which I can't remember right now. You know, really it's more about Mary. Am I amending it because I can't remember his name? Possibly. But it is about the Boleyns and about Mary and Anne Boleyn and their dynamics as sisters, and sisters who, you know, shared the same lover, and what that meant, and the balance of power, and the way the Tudor court ran at the time. It was so good. It was so good. Like, I think about this and I'm like, I want to reread it. Like, I want to be back in this world, because Philippa Gregory was just able to make it fun and light and believable, and at times dark and like heart-wrenching. It has all of it. It has all of it. But I felt like she was just she so well understood her audience, I think, and didn't write down to them, but she understood what we wanted and she gave it to us. So it's like certain characters in this, they're just so romantic and you just love them so much. And there are other characters where you're just like, ugh, I don't like you at all. And like you know, they develop and they change throughout the novel. And it's just so well done. It's so good. And it's also, it's got some steaminess in it. I mean, it just, everything about this book worked, okay? Everything about this book worked, and I loved it so much. Now we're really getting into the more recent reads. So the next one is Women Talking by Miriam Taves. This is about a Mennonite village in which the women this is a fictional account, but it's based off true events, and it says it from the very beginning. But the premise is that these women were assaulted in their sleep because of men poisoning them so that they would sleep deeply so that these men of the village could assault them. And it's about, you know, what do you do in that situation when things are incredibly nuanced? I mean, because these women, they can't read, they can't write. Ostensibly, like, they cannot just leave their village, leave the world that they know, and go out into the world and have a successful or even functional life because of the skills that they have. And so they're in this tight spot, and the way that Taves thinks about compassion and love and forgiveness is so nuanced, and it is so beautiful. Just a heart-wrencher, and probably of the books was just, it packed such a mighty punch. It was so good. It was so good. So that is definitely like high on my list of just loves, like books I've loved. I've read way more mysteries this year than I ever have, and one stands out above all of them as just the one that has gripped my heart and made me fall in love with the author, and that is Kate Atkinson's Case Histories. I just really love this. This is so good. It is the Jackson Brodie series. That's her main character. He is an ex-cop, and then now a private detective, and he is, you know, on the case. And it's interesting because as a private detective, what she does is she gives him, her main character, several different cases to look at, and from there she really starts to bind them together and make sure that they're, you know, they cross one another and they wink at one another, and that there are these tie-ins, not just with themes, but with characters and with ideas and the way that Jackson thinks about it. And it just moves so elegantly, and her writing is so, it's like funny and a little bit gritty and really entertaining. And it's just one that, like, I really loved. Like, her writing, I think, really aligned with my taste in reading, that it was such a pleasure to get back to this. Every single time I read it, I was just like, get me back into this world. And it's, I don't know, she just has something about the way that she writes characters, the way that she writes scenes, the way that she builds the mystery. And it's so entertaining. Like, that's the best way. But it's entertaining not in, like... not because it's just like she's talking down to you and it's like slapstick or something. It's more entertaining in this, like, she's being clever, and she has these little quirks to her characters that make them feel even more real. And I don't know, I found myself really caring about the main characters and rooting for them and wanting to know what happened. And isn't that what you want in a mystery? Like, you just want to know. You just want to know what happened, and to feel invested. And she got me to feel very invested while also being incredibly entertained. So, Case Histories, loved it. Next up is 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff. This is a nonfiction book that is an epistolary work, and the correspondence is between Helen Hanff herself, who is a writer in New York, and a bookstore. She is writing to a bookstore in England. And the relationships that she develops with the folks that run the bookstore, and the love that they develop for one another, and the fact that they're just wonderful accountings of the time. It's post-World War II, and there is this sense that you're getting an understanding of the time period. You know, you understand that England's been through the ringer, and certain things are less available than they once were. And there's just this immense sense of that, and I just love that. But on top of that, just the friendship that the folks of the store have with Helen is fantastic. It's full of humor and heart and love, and I just I love that book. One that I feel a little bit hazy on, but I'll tentatively put these last two on my list because I really just finished them. So it could be that I'm on the high of just finishing them. But one of which is Foe by Ian Reid. I really love this book. This is about a couple living in the middle of nowhere, and a stranger arrives with an interesting proposition. It is science fiction meets like thought, or like being, it's not science fiction for coziness, it's science fiction to help you like conduct a thought experiment. And it was so good. And the thought experiment is around marriage. And it was far deeper than I thought it was going to be. And it was really, really engaging. And I really, really loved it. But yeah, so if you're interested in like a super quick, fast, like get her done, but also like surprisingly deep and will stick with you kind of read, Foe by Ian Reid. So good. And then my last one that is on the top of this list is The Hours by Michael Cunningham. This tells the story of three women. So Virginia Woolf, the writer Virginia Woolf, who everyone knows I love, or most people who watch this channel regularly or know me in real life, love Virginia Woolf. And it also talks about her character, Virginia Woolf's character, Clarissa Dalloway of Mrs. Dalloway. And there is this third character named Mrs. Brown. And all three of them are, there is these themes that Cunningham writes about, most notably, you know, what it means to be a woman in the world, the way that women move through the world, mental illness / mental health, and the way that we process things, and how to be a good friend, and our sexuality, all of that stuff. It's all tied up. It's all tied up in The Hours by Michael Cunningham as I hit my light. It's so good and so thought-provoking. And interestingly, though I finished this, like over a week ago, I'm still thinking about some of the scenes in this book. And if you've read it, the cake scene, you know, it's just, for a tiny little slim thing, it really packs a punch. And the creativity, like having read Mrs. Dalloway myself, the creativity that Michael Cunningham brings to this work was really interesting, and really fascinating. And I just really loved it. It was so good. So, yeah, The Hours is like my newest, most favorite ooey gooey wonderful read. Will you tell me, I've shared all of my favorites, tell me about your favorites down below. I must know. I must know. I could do honorable mentions, but my honorable mentions would be like miles and miles long. So, yeah, but anyhow, these to me are like the creme de la creme. When I just sort of on gut instinct pick them. So on gut instinct, what are some of your favorites this year? The reads that worked best for you? Let me know. Let a girl know. I shared. It's your turn. And yeah, that's it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye.